Hey guys, Donkey the Donkey here, and while you watch this headshot highlight, we are going to be going over tactics and strategies for a duos team in Playerunknown's Battlegrounds today, covering some of the key points and what's going to lead to more victories for you and your partner. So right away, what you need to do in a duos is establish who the shot caller is going to be, because this is going to lead to a lot more organization. Someone's going to be able to call when and where you're dropping, what to do, who to engage, where to move to. Second of all, picking loot locations. This is one of the most important things in the game. I suggest trying to get as far away from the plane as possible to avoid the most amount of players. That way you can have some time to loot up. Some of my couple favorite spots are the Milta power plant and the Georgia Bowl containers. You'll often see these places are on the fringes of where the plane is. You can usually get some pretty good tier 2, tier 3 loot there. It is absolutely crucial that you do not miss any important loot while you're going through your initial couple buildings. So you need to maintain constant communication with your partner that, number one, once you get a rifle, body armor, and helmet, and let your partner know if you found significant upgrades by saying, hey, tier 3 armor on my position, 3rd story, 3 doors down on the right. That way your partner knows exactly where he needs to go in case he can't come to you right then. Now to further touch base on communication, this is going to go with identifying enemies as well. If you watch some of my earlier videos, you hear me refer to the 3 Ds known as distance, direction, and description. So whenever you encounter an enemy, I mean obviously this is kind of an exception here, but you want to call out those 3 details right there. Additionally, when it comes down to movement in your duos, you can be very fluid with how you're going. You notice these 2 guys we just encountered right here that you see on the screen, these guys are stacked right on top of each other in the open. I know me and my partner and I are a little close together too, but you'll see here shortly that we know they didn't see us right away. They're just kind of hanging on the rocks. And so what we do is you got to make plans on the fly where you don't have to stick together at the hip. And so I'm actually you're not going to hear the audio here, but you're going to hear me instruct my partner that, hey, I'm going to hold position here. And uncover head on. You go ahead and go swing out wide and work the left flank. And we do end up eventually downing these 2 guys here, and partially because I have a silencer, they don't really see. I don't think they ever fully determine where we're coming at. But just remember, you can cover a whole lot of ground as a duos team. You don't have to be just static 2 guys standing right next to each other at the hip and shooting together. The bigger you spread out, the more ground you control and the more information you have. If you're just staying on one spot, you're leaving a lot to be guessed at. Essentially, you don't know what's over that next ridge necessarily. But something to keep in mind is in terms of how far apart you can get from one another. It's really dependent on the terrain, because you both, at any point in time, regardless of how far apart you are, you want to be able to support each other with fire. So if either of you, start getting shot at, both of you want to be able to return accurate fire on the enemy wherever they're shooting you from. Now, additionally from there, when it comes to movement, you've probably seen this in some other videos. We talk about bounding, and this is kind of what we do here. Is my partner runs from cover to cover, and just kind of taking a quick stop and a look and seeing what's in front of him. Essentially, he's got to be able to pick a piece, whether it's a tree or a rock or something, and basically you're just hopping and skipping along until you get to your ultimate destination. And in this situation, because the enemy knew I was still there, they knew they really couldn't expose themselves, and they actually caught him quite by surprise here. Now, one big key thing to keep in mind is playing around the gear you have. How geared are you? In this situation, I have a 15x. My partner has an M24 with an 8x. We decided to play the ultra long range game. You don't want to go into the cities whenever you have, obviously really good long range gear, and vice versa. If you've only got shotguns, maybe you don't have a 4X or an ACOG or anything like that, you probably want to go try and play around buildings and cities if you can. That way you can play to your strengths and hopefully gear up through looting others. Now, whenever you take contact, we end up getting ambushed from behind here. You've got to quickly return fire and ascertain where the enemy's from. That's what happens when you call out the 3 Ds, distance, direction, and description. So we called out 2 guys here about 50 meters away. And it's okay to heal up throughout the fights, and these guys try to maneuver on you. You have to move. Generally, if you stay static, unless you're in a really, really good fighting position, people are going to try and flank you and potentially get the drop on you. And it's okay if you get low, like I am now, to just fall back and let your teammate essentially finish the job. It's not the hardest thing ever to 1v2 here if you're in a good position. So as I start to take some more fire, I just dive behind cover and my teammate finishes the job. The next thing I want to talk about is key terrain. Now, there's always going to be situations, no matter what, we've all experienced it, where you're just going to get fucked over by the circle. You're going to end up in an open field, and there's really nothing you can do about it. However, you need to try within the best of your ability with what the game gives you to seize key terrain. Now, key terrain can be anything. It could be a slight depression in the ground that you can take cover in. It could be a bush, it could be a single tree, but in terms of a bigger aspect, we can talk about, hills, hilltops, or key buildings like this air traffic control tower. Essentially, you can get a lot of different angles where, it's got lots of dead zones around it, or basically open areas around it. And that's what you need to focus on as a team, is wherever you're going, what is the piece of key terrain in the area you're traveling that you need to seize, clear, and take control of in order to gain the biggest advantage. So as this video wraps up, we find ourselves on a big piece of key terrain, one of these big mounds of the aircraft hangars, in the final circle with my partner TPP Frost. And from this position, because these guys were hanging out on the edge and didn't try and move to terrain earlier, they're basically forced to either get shot or get killed in the grass. And that's why key terrain is so important, and making a plan and having a shot caller to implement a plan and get moving on it early. So I hope you guys enjoyed this video. This is kind of an intro to duos, very similar to my squad tactics. Please hit that subscribe button if you haven't already. We're sitting at almost 2,000 subs now. The hype train is in full motion. Please follow me on Twitch, and I will see you guys out in the battlefield.